Ever noticed how a single phrase can completely change a conversation or your entire day? The audiobook, Word Magic, Change Your Language to Transform Your Life, reveals the neurological power behind your words. Master 9 linguistic dimensions that rewire your brain, reshape emotions, and create momentum where you once felt stuck. Without these verbal tools, you'll continue reinforcing the very limitations you're trying to overcome. Your new reality begins with your next word. Chapter 1. Reframe. Why does the same scenario feel daunting to one person, yet thrilling to another? Imagine standing backstage, moments before delivering a crucial speech. Your pulse quickens, palms begin to sweat, and your heart pounds like a drumbeat that only you can hear. Some people feel crippled, labeling this moment as anxiety, while others feel exhilarated, defining the very same sensations as excitement. The difference lies entirely in the words they choose. In this chapter, you'll discover how transforming your language can dramatically shift your emotional experience and enhance performance under pressure. You'll master the subtle art of reframing, converting threats into challenges, anxious thoughts into empowering declarations, and losses into opportunities. With just a few simple shifts in your daily vocabulary, you'll unlock greater confidence, creativity, and control. Every day, your inner dialogue sets the stage for your reality. Without realizing it, you might habitually describe upcoming events in threat-laden language. Words like difficult, overwhelming, or stressful seep into your internal narrative, sending signals of alarm throughout your brain and body. These words don't just describe your emotions, they actively shape them. The brain hears threat and promptly activates stress pathways, flooding your system with cortisol, impairing your clarity, and narrowing your vision. Fortunately, language offers you a powerful lever to interrupt this process. Consider what happens when you label a task as a challenge instead of a threat. Research demonstrates that this seemingly small semantic tweak dramatically dampens cortisol spikes. In fact, labeling something as a challenge instructs your brain to mobilize resources more effectively, sharpening your cognitive functions and increasing your problem-solving accuracy. The words you select don't merely reflect your emotions, they define them. Consider the sensation often labeled as anxiety. Your heart races, adrenaline surges, and breathing quickens. Interestingly, these same physiological markers accompany excitement. Cognitive relabeling leverages this overlap. When you consciously describe yourself as excited rather than anxious, you retain the beneficial energy of heightened arousal while discarding the paralyzing narrative of fear. This shift doesn't require you to deny your physical sensations. Rather, it allows you to embrace them as fuel for action. This powerful reframing strategy was confirmed in a compelling Harvard study. Participants who repeated, "I'm excited," before giving a public speech were rated significantly more persuasive and experienced lower stress than those who stated, "I'm anxious." Simply substituting one emotional label for another changed both their experience and their performance. This is not wishful thinking. This is precise linguistic engineering. Yet, reframing isn't just about managing intense emotions, it's also a key to enhancing motivation and performance. Humans instinctively fear losing more than they relish winning. This phenomenon is known as loss aversion. Consider how often your goals are framed around avoiding negatives. "I can't fail this test," or "I don't want to lose this client." Such statements subtly emphasize loss, priming your brain for caution and avoidance, hindering proactive action. By contrast, framing goals in terms of potential gains stimulates your innate drive toward action and approach. Instead of avoiding failure, you become eager to seize success. For instance, rephrasing "I can't fail this test" to "I'm determined to excel on this test" shifts your mental landscape entirely. The University of Bath demonstrated this vividly with elite rowers who received coaching cues emphasizing gain, earn points on each pull, versus loss, avoid losing points. Those hearing gain-oriented cues generated significantly greater power output, clear evidence that gain framing unlocks higher levels of motivation and performance. But how exactly do you integrate these linguistic reframes into your everyday life? It begins by developing the habit of noticing your current language patterns. Listen closely to your self-talk. Do you find yourself frequently saying, I have to, rather than I get to? The former phrase burdens you, turning even desirable activities into obligations, while the latter frames tasks as privileges, instantly elevating your mood and energy. Likewise, catch yourself when you default to phrases like, I can't. This small phrase shuts down possibilities before they are even explored. Instead, use I can once I to insert possibility in actionable steps. Similarly, verbs of choice such as decide, opt, and choose subtly reinforce your sense of autonomy and control. This active phrasing primes your brain to approach tasks with initiative rather than resignation. Understanding the science underpinning these language shifts enhances their effectiveness. Neuroendocrine responses clearly illustrate how altering your verbal framing changes physiological reactions. Specifically, reframing language shifts cortisol to DHEA ratios in your bloodstream, a biochemical marker strongly associated with resilience and cognitive performance. At the neural level, semantic changes quiet the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm center, helping you maintain composure under pressure. Prospect theory further elucidates why reframing loss as potential gain is so powerful. Humans instinctively act more vigorously to preserve gains rather than merely avoiding losses. Therefore, translating fear of failure into pursuit of reward taps into this biological incentive system, making tasks inherently more appealing and engaging. With this scientific foundation, you're now equipped to practice rapid reframing daily. Begin with the 3-step pause, phrase, press forward script. First, pause momentarily to interrupt any negative thought spiral. Second, deliberately phrase your next statement in an empowering, positive frame. Finally, press forward immediately, acting from this newly adopted stance. Implementing micro reframes during meetings or in emails can subtly shift group dynamics toward optimism and productivity. To solidify reframing as an enduring habit, integrate it into your morning planning routine. Pair reframing exercises with existing habits to leverage consistency and ease. Consider forming reframe circles, where friends or colleagues regularly share language shifts, providing mutual encouragement and reinforcement. Tracking your progress enhances motivation and confirms the tangible benefits of reframing. Over time, you'll notice measurable improvements in your mood, energy, and performance outcomes. Keep a daily reframe journal, documenting at least 3 instances each day when you've successfully altered your language. Conduct periodic loss-to-gain flip audits, ensuring your goal-setting language remains consistently empowering. As you weave these reframing strategies into your daily communication patterns, both your internal dialogues and external interactions will transform. Embrace the challenge language script to proactively prepare for upcoming stressors, replacing dread with eagerness. Each deliberate word choice cultivates a mindset that thrives on possibility, converting challenges into catalysts for growth. You've already taken the first crucial step toward linguistic mastery. Yet, even the most skillful reframing can falter without the foundational belief that improvement is possible. Reframing is powerful, but it thrives most robustly in a mental environment fertile with potential and possibility. As you strengthen your linguistic toolkit, you'll soon discover the subtle yet crucial role that mindset plays. And therein lies your next intriguing journey. Just beyond reframing awaits another potent linguistic shift, one that primes your entire cognitive landscape for sustained growth. Soon, you'll uncover the subtle power embedded in one deceptively simple word. But first, let the insights from reframing permeate your thoughts, actions, and daily conversations, transforming your approach from resistance to opportunity, from anxiety to excitement. Your linguistic transformation has begun, and greater shifts await. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2: Growth. Have you ever noticed how a single word can completely transform your perception of possibility? Consider these 2 statements. I can't solve this problem versus I can't solve this problem yet. The difference seems subtle, just 3 letters added to the end. But in that tiny linguistic addition lies an extraordinary power that can reshape your entire approach to challenges, learning, and personal development. When you encounter obstacles, your brain makes rapid predictions about your likelihood of success. These predictions aren't merely passive assessments, they actively shape your motivation, persistence, and ultimately your outcomes. The language you use during these moments doesn't just describe your reality, it creates it. And within this linguistic landscape exists a hidden key that unlocks doors you might have assumed were permanently closed. This chapter explores how specific language patterns can install what psychologists call a growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. But we're not just talking about positive thinking or generic affirmations. We're diving into precise linguistic tools backed by neuroscience and behavioral research that literally rewire how your brain processes challenges and setbacks. The first of these linguistic tools might surprise you with its simplicity. It's a word so common you might overlook its transformative potential. Yet, this 3-letter word serves as a powerful temporal marker, signaling to your brain that current inability is merely a waypoint on a journey toward mastery, not a permanent condition. When you append yet to statements about what you can't do, you keep your brain's prediction machinery open to future possibilities rather than shutting them down. This isn't mere speculation. A Stanford-led experiment revealed that students who added yet to skill statements subsequently selected puzzles that were 40% more difficult than those chosen by the control group. Simply by adding this tiny word, these students signaled to their brains that growth was not only possible, but expected, which in turn increased their willingness to embrace challenge rather than avoid it. Try this right now. Think of something you've been struggling with. Form the sentence, "I'm not good at," and complete it with your challenge. Now, add yet to the end and say it again. Notice how different it feels? The first version feels final, closed, definitive. The second version breathes possibility into the statement, creating space for improvement and growth. But the power of yet represents just the beginning of your linguistic toolkit for growth. The words surrounding you, whether spoken aloud or silently in your thoughts, create an atmosphere that either nurtures or hinders your development. This is where the concept of positive language priming becomes crucial. Your brain constantly scans your environment for cues about what's possible and what's expected. When you deliberately saturate your attention with constructive, capability-focused words, you prime your neural pathways for persistence and resilience. Words like capable, improve, learn, develop, and adapt serve as subtle but powerful signals that orient your mind toward growth. This effect was elegantly demonstrated in EEG research from the University of Tokyo, where exposure to affirmative word lists measurably increased frontal midline theta, a neural signature of sustained attention during problem-solving tasks. Participants who viewed growth-oriented vocabulary before attempting challenging puzzles showed enhanced focus and persisted longer when facing obstacles. Creating your personal Bright Word deck, a collection of growth-oriented terms that resonate with you, provides a practical way to implement this research. Place these words where you'll encounter them regularly, on your desk, as phone wallpaper, or as recurring calendar notifications. Each exposure subtly recalibrates your mental environment toward possibility and development. The third linguistic tool for installing a growth mindset involves transforming how you deliver and receive feedback. Most of us have experienced the hollow praise of "good job" or "you're so smart." While well-intentioned, such generic compliments actually undermine growth by implying that success comes from fixed traits rather than specific strategies and efforts. High-resolution praise, by contrast, zooms in on particular actions and choices that led to success. Instead of "you're brilliant at math," try "I noticed how you broke down that complex problem into smaller parts and checked your work carefully." This detailed feedback provides actionable information about what worked, encouraging the recipient to replicate effective strategies rather than worry about maintaining a smart image. The power of this approach was demonstrated dramatically in a 2022 field study conducted across 2 call centers. Teams receiving effort-specific praise, your persistence in asking clarifying questions helped resolve customer issues efficiently, boosted their daily call volume by 23%. Meanwhile, teams hearing generic praise, "Great work today, team," showed no improvement whatsoever. The difference wasn't in the positivity of the feedback, but in its specificity and focus on process rather than traits. To implement high-resolution praise in your own life, break down the vague, "you're smart," into tactical observations about strategy, effort, and choices. Notice and name the specific approaches that worked well. Additionally, consider the timing of your feedback. Praise delivered immediately after effort, rather than only after success, reinforces the value of the process itself, not just the outcome. Understanding the neuroscience behind these linguistic tools deepens their impact. When you use future-oriented language like "yet," you engage dopamine signaling pathways that respond to prediction and anticipation. Your brain literally creates a positive expectancy loop, a neural state of readiness for future success that wasn't present before. These prediction error loops are fascinating. When your brain expects failure but encounters success, even small wins, the resulting surprise generates stronger learning signals than expected outcomes. By keeping possibilities open with "yet," you create the conditions for these powerful learning moments to occur. The prefrontal cortex, your brain's center for planning, decision-making, and moderating social behavior, plays a crucial role in this process. This region helps you visualize incremental progress and maintain focus despite setbacks. Growth-oriented language strengthens these neural pathways, making it easier to persist through challenges over time. Moving from theory to practice, consider implementing a structured 4-question growth debrief after completing important tasks. 1. What specific strategies worked well? 2. What did I learn from what didn't work? 3. How can I apply these insights next time? 4. What growth do I notice compared to previous attempts? This simple reflection framework reinforces the growth mindset by directing attention to learning and improvement rather than fixed judgments of success or failure. For teams, designing an effort leaderboard that highlights specific strategies and approaches rather than just outcomes can transform competitive environments into collaborative learning spaces. This shifts focus from who's the best to what works best, a subtle but powerful distinction that fosters growth for everyone involved. Setting a growth word alarm on your phone, a reminder every few hours to expose yourself to growth-oriented language, provides another practical implementation tool. Each time it sounds, read or speak aloud a few words from your Bright Word deck, reinforcing neural pathways associated with development and possibility. The long-range payoffs of installing this growth-oriented linguistic operating system extend far beyond immediate performance improvements. Over time, you'll develop increased tolerance for difficult tasks, approaching challenges with curiosity rather than dread. Your skills will compound more rapidly as you embrace rather than avoid the edges of your ability. Perhaps most powerfully, your growth-oriented language will spread to those around you, creating a culture of development and possibility. To solidify these practices, maintain a "yet" diary where you rewrite 3 fixed statements each night, transforming them with the addition of "yet," and noting how this shift changes your perception of possibility. Create a 24-word priming read-aloud, a personal collection of growth-oriented terms that you review daily to saturate your linguistic environment with possibility. Finally, keep an effort-focused praise log documenting specific, process-oriented feedback you give to family members, colleagues, or yourself. As you integrate these linguistic tools into your daily life, you'll find yourself naturally gravitating toward challenge rather than comfort, seeing setbacks as information rather than judgment, and approaching your capabilities as fluid rather than fixed. The growth mindset, installed through deliberate language choices, becomes not just a belief, but a lived experience, one that continuously expands what's possible for you. And while these linguistic shifts powerfully reshape how you approach learning and development, they represent just one dimension of your verbal toolkit. Beyond believing in your capacity to grow lies another crucial question. Who controls your choices and actions? As you'll discover in the next chapter, the language of agency opens doors to a kind of freedom and responsibility that many never fully experience, a linguistic shift that transforms you from passive recipient to active author of your life story. Chapter 3, Agency. The email landed in your inbox 3 days ago. The deadline looms tomorrow. Yet somehow, you find yourself saying, the report wasn't finished on time. Notice anything strange about that phrasing? Not, I didn't finish the report, but the report wasn't finished, as if the document itself bears responsibility for its incomplete status. This subtle linguistic sleight of hand performs a remarkable feat. It distances you from your own actions and choices. We all do this. Mistakes were made. Things didn't work out. The opportunity was missed. These passive constructions appear innocuous, even natural, but hidden within these verbal patterns lies a profound truth about how we perceive our relationship to the world, and more importantly, how we might transform it. Language shapes our sense of control in ways most of us never consciously recognize. The words we choose don't merely describe our reality, they actively construct it, framing our perception of what's possible and who holds the power to create change. When we consistently speak in passive terms, we linguistically position ourselves as objects to whom things happen rather than subjects who make things happen. What if a simple shift in your verbal patterns could dramatically alter your sense of control, motivation, and effectiveness? What if changing how you speak about your actions could transform your very identity and behavior? This chapter explores precisely that possibility, how specific language choices can move you from passive recipient to active author of your life story. The first key to unlocking your sense of agency lies in what linguists call voice, not volume or tone, but whether your verbs position you as the doer or the done to. Compare these statements. The project was delayed versus I rescheduled the project. The first obscures responsibility, the second claims it. While both describe the same outcome, they create entirely different psychological experiences. Active verbs like take, choose, build, create, and decide place you squarely in the driver's seat. They acknowledge your power to affect outcomes. Passive constructions, by contrast, subtly reinforce a mindset of helplessness. This isn't just grammatical nitpicking, it's about how language patterns shape your fundamental orientation toward life. A 2020 university study demonstrated this effect convincingly. Participants who rewrote their weekly plans in active voice, I will complete the report, rather than the report will be completed, reported 15% higher self-efficacy scores after just 3 weeks. Their confidence in their ability to affect outcomes measurably increased, simply by changing how they described their intentions. Try this experiment. Take your current to-do list and examine each item. How many are phrased passively? Rewrite each one with yourself as the clear actor. Instead of emails need to be answered, write, I will respond to emails. Notice how this small shift immediately clarifies who's responsible and increases your sense of control over the task. But agency goes beyond verb choice. Perhaps even more powerful is how you linguistically frame your very identity. Consider the difference between I want to read more books and I am a reader. The first expresses a desire, the second claims an identity. While seemingly similar, these statements engage completely different psychological mechanisms. When you define yourself with an identity statement, I am a runner, rather than I want to run more, you activate what psychologists call consistency drives, powerful motivational forces that push you to align your behavior with your self-concept. Your brain naturally seeks coherence between who you believe yourself to be and how you act. By linguistically claiming an identity aligned with your goals, you harness this drive for consistency. This effect was dramatically illustrated in a 2022 mobile tracking study of people trying to quit smoking. Those who adopted the identity label, non-smoker, resisted cravings twice as often as those who described themselves as trying to quit. The identity statement created a stronger behavioral anchor than the intention statement, even though both groups had the same goal. Crafting effective identity statements requires careful attention. They should align authentically with your goals while remaining believable enough that your brain doesn't reject them outright. For instance, if you've never jogged a day in your life, suddenly declaring "I am a marathon runner" may trigger internal resistance. Instead, try "I am becoming a runner" or "I am someone who prioritizes movement," statements that bridge your current reality with your aspiration. Equally important is avoiding what might be called fragile identity traps, statements like "I'm a natural" or "I'm gifted at this," that tie your identity to innate traits rather than choices and actions. These seemingly positive self-descriptions can actually undermine agency by implying that your abilities exist independent of your efforts. Instead, anchor your identity in commitments and values. "I am someone who persists," rather than "I am naturally talented." Understanding the cognitive architecture behind these linguistic shifts deepens their impact. Self-determination theory, a comprehensive framework for human motivation, identifies 3 core psychological needs: autonomy, sense of choice; competence, sense of capability; and relatedness, sense of connection. The language of agency directly supports these needs by emphasizing choice, highlighting capability, and positioning you in active relationship with others. When you consistently use active verbs, you linguistically reinforce your autonomy. When you claim identity statements aligned with your goals, you strengthen your sense of competence. And when you acknowledge your impact on others through active constructions, you clarify your relatedness. Together, these verbal patterns create a psychological environment where motivation flourishes. Perhaps the most practical application of agency language involves bridging abstract traits into concrete actions. We often describe ourselves or our goals in terms of qualities: creative, organized, proactive, without translating these labels into specific behaviors. This abstraction creates a gap between intention and action that can lead to procrastination and confusion. Research from MIT Media Lab demonstrated that trait-to-behavior prompts reduced task initiation time by 28% in controlled productivity experiments. When participants converted abstract goals, "be more creative," into concrete actions, "sketch 3 rough ideas in the next 15 minutes," they started faster and persisted longer. Creating a daily trait-action pairing board offers a practical implementation of this research. For each quality you want to embody, identify 2 to 3 specific micro-behaviors that express it. If you value thoroughness, your paired actions might include review documents twice before submitting, or create checklists for recurring tasks. This translation process bridges the gap between who you want to be and what you actually do. The concept of rapid prototyping further enhances this approach. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions or complete clarity, commit to 15-minute action bursts that express your desired traits. Want to be more creative? Set a timer for 15 minutes and generate ideas without judgment. Seeking to be more organized? Spend 15 minutes sorting one small area. These brief, focused actions build momentum and provide immediate evidence that you can embody your desired qualities. Sustaining your sense of agency requires ongoing attention and reinforcement. Weekly agency audits, brief reviews of your language patterns in emails, conversations, and self-talk help identify slips back into passive constructions. Look particularly at how you describe setbacks or challenges. Do you claim responsibility or distance yourself? This awareness creates opportunities for conscious recalibration. Equally important is developing celebratory language that reinforces your wins. When you accomplish something, resist the urge to minimize it. "It was nothing," or attribute it to external factors. "I got lucky." Instead, acknowledge your role with phrases like, "I committed to this and followed through," or "I chose to prioritize this goal." This linguistic ownership of success strengthens your sense of agency just as powerfully as owning your choices. Community accountability scripts provide another powerful tool. These are pre-crafted statements that help you communicate your goals to others in agency-rich language. "I'm working to develop my public speaking skills." Would you be willing to listen to my practice presentation and share specific feedback on my pacing and clarity? Such statements position you as the active driver of your growth while inviting others to support your efforts. To integrate these concepts into daily practice, begin with a simple passive to active rewrite drill. Each day, take one page of your writing, an email, journal entry, or report, and revise every passive construction into an active one. This exercise builds your awareness of language patterns and strengthens your ability to communicate with agency. Creating identity statement wall art places your core self-definitions where you'll see them regularly, reinforcing these powerful self-concepts throughout your day. Choose 3 to 5 identity statements that align with your deepest values and goals, then display them prominently in your personal space. Finally, the Trait to Action 7-Day Challenge provides structured practice in bridging abstract qualities to concrete behaviors. Each day, select one trait you value and identify 3 specific actions that express it. Commit to implementing at least one of these actions before the day ends. This daily practice builds the crucial skill of translating who you want to be into what you actually do. As you integrate these linguistic shifts into your daily communication, you'll experience a profound transformation in how you relate to challenges, opportunities, and your own capabilities. Your language will increasingly reflect and reinforce your position as the primary author of your life story, not merely a character to whom things happen, but the creator who shapes what happens next. The journey toward linguistic agency represents a crucial step in reclaiming your power and effectiveness. Yet, even as you master the language of present action, another temporal dimension awaits exploration. Beyond claiming ownership of what you do lies the question of when you do it, and how the words you use about time itself might be silently shaping your choices, priorities, and follow-through. The next chapter reveals how subtle shifts in temporal language can collapse the distance between intention and action, bringing your future goals into present focus with remarkable clarity and force. Chapter 4, Timecraft. I'll start tomorrow. How many times have you uttered this seemingly innocent phrase? It sounds like a commitment, yet somehow tomorrow perpetually remains just beyond reach. Meanwhile, that important project, that crucial conversation, that life-changing habit continues to hover in some nebulous future that never quite arrives. What if the problem isn't your willpower or motivation, but something far more fundamental, the very language you use to think and talk about time itself? What if the words you choose when referring to future actions are subtly undermining your ability to take those actions now? Time exists as our most precious and paradoxical resource. We can't touch it, store it, or see it, yet everything we do unfolds within its invisible framework. Most of us assume time is something that simply happens to us, a neutral backdrop against which our lives play out. But what if time isn't just happening to you? What if, through specific linguistic choices, you could actively craft your relationship with time to serve your deepest goals and values? This chapter explores a fascinating dimension of language that few people consciously leverage: the power of temporal framing. The words you use to position yourself in time, past, present, and future, don't merely describe when things happen. They actively shape your motivation, decision-making, and follow-through. By mastering what might be called timecraft, you can collapse the psychological distance between intention and action, bringing your future goals into present focus with remarkable clarity and force. Consider the subtle difference between these statements. I hope to finish the project versus I will submit the completed project by 5 p.m. Friday. The first floats in vague aspiration. The second anchors your commitment in concrete future action with a specific deadline. This shift from conditional to declarative future tense might seem minor, but it triggers profound changes in how your brain processes the commitment. When you use explicit future tense verbs with specific time markers, I will call the client at 10 a.m. tomorrow, you activate the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for planning and executive function. This neural engagement increases planning depth and implementation specificity, creating stronger memory traces for the intended action. Your brain literally begins preparing for the future event as soon as you frame it in concrete, time-bound language. A Finnish longitudinal study demonstrated this effect convincingly. Students who used explicit future tense commitments in their academic diaries, "I will complete the research paper by Wednesday at 3 p.m., met their semester goals 34% more often than those using vague or temporal framing, "I need to work on the research paper soon." The specificity of the temporal commitment created a stronger implementation intention, bridging the gap between what psychologists call the wanting self and the doing self. Try this experiment. Take one of your current goals and rewrite it using precise future tense verbs with specific time markers. Instead of "I should exercise more," write "I will complete a 20-minute workout tomorrow at 7 a.m." Notice how this linguistic shift immediately makes the commitment feel more concrete and actionable. But temporal framing extends beyond verb tense. Perhaps even more powerful is the practice of future self dialogue, deliberately creating conversations between your current self and your future self to make distant rewards more vivid and compelling. Most of us suffer from what behavioral economists call present bias, the tendency to choose smaller immediate rewards over larger future ones. This temporal discounting happens partly because our future selves feel like strangers to us. We struggle to emotionally connect with the person we'll become. Future self-dialogue bridges this gap by creating a vivid, emotional connection with your older self, making their needs and experiences more real to your present-day decision-making. A groundbreaking UCLA experiment demonstrated this effect dramatically. Adults who wrote letters from the perspective of their 80-year-old selves, describing how grateful they were for healthy habits started decades earlier, increased their gym attendance by 29% over 8 weeks. By linguistically embodying their future selves, participants created an emotional connection that made present sacrifices for future benefits feel more worthwhile. This technique works because it transforms abstract future benefits into concrete emotional experiences. When your future self thanks your present self for making wise choices now, those choices become more meaningful and motivating. The future self ceases to be a stranger and becomes a valued relationship worth investing in. Creating effective future self dialogues involves several key elements. First, write from the future perspective using first-person language. "I am so grateful that you." Second, include specific details about how present actions affected future outcomes. Third, express authentic emotion, gratitude, relief, or even regret, to strengthen the emotional impact. These conversations can take various forms: letters, audio recordings, or even imagined dialogues during meditation. For particularly important decisions, consider creating future self-briefings, short audio recordings from your future perspective that you can play before decision points. For example, record a message from you 6 months after completing a major project, describing the benefits and satisfaction you experienced. Listen to this recording when motivation flags to reconnect with the future value of your present efforts. While future-focused language pulls distant goals into present awareness, another temporal dimension deserves equal attention: how you linguistically process the past, particularly regrets and setbacks. Many people remain stuck in cycles of rumination, mentally replaying past mistakes in ways that drain energy and confidence. The language you use to narrate past experiences can either trap you in rumination or extract valuable lessons that fuel forward motion. This is where perspective-taking tenses, particularly the past perfect, offer surprising power. Compare these statements: "I failed the presentation," versus "I had prepared inadequately, but then I learned the importance of rehearsal." The first uses simple past tense, keeping the focus on the negative outcome. The second uses past perfect, "had prepared," to position the failure as completed, followed by a learning outcome that bridges to future improvement. Emotion regulation research confirms that past perfect reflection accelerates mood recovery after setbacks compared with simple past narration. By linguistically framing negative events as completed and extracted for learning, you free up emotional bandwidth for forward movement, rather than remaining stuck in regret. Developing a past perfect reflection framework provides a structured approach to this linguistic shift. When processing a setback, first describe what happened using past perfect. I had missed the deadline. Then identify the specific learning or insight gained. I had underestimated the time required for feedback. Finally, connect this learning to future action. Now I will build in an extra day for revisions on all projects. This framework allows you to extract valuable lessons without getting trapped in rumination. The goal isn't to deny mistakes or avoid responsibility, but to process them in a way that fuels growth rather than shame. Building a lessons library document where you record these extracted insights creates a valuable resource that transforms setbacks into stepping stones. Integrating these temporal language shifts into your daily routines creates lasting change. Monthly goal forecast sessions provide dedicated time to frame your key objectives in precise future tense with specific deadlines. Daily intentional closure rituals, brief end-of-day reflections using past perfect to process completed work, help extract learning and prepare for tomorrow's priorities. Tracking both lagging indicators, results already achieved, and leading indicators, behaviors that predict future results, provides a balanced temporal perspective on your progress. This dual focus keeps you motivated by acknowledging past wins while maintaining clarity about the present actions that create future success. To experience the power of Timecraft immediately, try these practical exercises. First, create a 5-minute 2030 conversation script, a brief dialogue with yourself 7 years in the future, discussing how your current priorities and choices affected your life trajectory. The temporal distance is close enough to feel relevant, yet far enough to reveal the long-term impact of today's decisions. Next, complete a future tense goal rewrite of your top 3 priorities, converting vague aspirations into specific, time-bound commitments with concrete verbs. Instead of, I want to improve my public speaking, write, I will deliver a 5-minute presentation at the department meeting on June 15th. This linguistic precision dramatically increases the likelihood of follow-through. Finally, use a past perfect regret processing worksheet to transform one lingering regret into fuel for growth. Describe what happened using past perfect, identify the specific lesson learned, and connect this insight to a future action you can take to apply this learning. As you master these temporal language shifts, you'll experience a profound transformation in how you relate to time itself. Rather than feeling constantly behind or perpetually postponing important actions to some elusive later, you'll develop the ability to collapse time psychologically, to feel the future pulling you forward and the past propelling you with its lessons. The words you use to position yourself in time create your lived experience of time. Through deliberate linguistic choices, you can transform time from an abstract concept that controls you into a practical resource that serves your deepest goals and values. This is the essence of Timecraft, not merely managing time, but actively shaping your relationship with it through language. Yet even as you master the language of time, another dimension of linguistic power awaits exploration. Beyond statements lies the transformative potential of questions. Not just any questions, but those crafted with precision to unlock creativity, deepen understanding, and move others to action. The next chapter reveals how the questions you ask of yourself and others might be the most underutilized tool in your entire linguistic arsenal. Chapter 5, Inquiry. Have you ever noticed how a single question can completely transform a conversation? Picture this. A team meeting has devolved into finger-pointing about a missed deadline. The energy in the room is tense, defensive, and increasingly hostile. Then someone speaks up with these words, "How might we prevent this situation in our next project?" Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. People sit up straighter. The focus pivots from blame to possibility. Ideas begin to flow. What just happened? It wasn't magic, it was linguistics. We typically think of questions as simple information gathering tools, but in reality, questions are among the most powerful linguistic devices we possess. They don't just extract information, they actively shape thinking, direct attention, and create psychological states. The right question at the right moment can unlock creativity, diffuse tension, deepen connection, and motivate action in ways that statements simply cannot. This chapter explores a dimension of language that most people dramatically underutilize: the strategic power of inquiry. Beyond merely asking more questions, you'll discover how to craft questions with precision, questions that bypass defensiveness, spark innovation, and move others to action. The language of inquiry represents perhaps the most underappreciated tool in your entire linguistic arsenal. At the heart of powerful questioning lies what might be called solution-focused phrasing. Consider the difference between these two approaches to the same problem. Why did this project fail? Versus how might we improve our process next time? The first question implicitly assigns blame and orients attention toward past mistakes. The second bypasses blame entirely and directs thinking toward future possibilities. This subtle shift from problem-focused to solution-focused language creates profound effects on both individual psychology and group dynamics. When you begin questions with "how might we?", you prime what psychologists call divergent thinking, the expansive, exploratory mental mode essential for creativity and problem-solving. This phrasing signals that multiple solutions exist, not just one right answer, and that collaboration is welcome through the inclusive we. The impact of this approach was demonstrated in a 2022 design sprint study where teams trained in solution-focused questioning generated 45% more novel ideas and reached consensus 27% faster than control groups using traditional problem analysis questions. The solution-focused teams didn't just produce more ideas, they also reported higher satisfaction and lower interpersonal tension throughout the process. Try this experiment. The next time you face a challenge, resist the urge to ask, "Why did this happen?" or "Who's responsible?" Instead, frame your inquiry as, "How might we address this situation?" or "What approaches could help us move forward?" Notice how this linguistic shift immediately changes the emotional tone and creative potential of the conversation. But solution-focused phrasing represents just one dimension of powerful questioning. Equally important is how you position yourself when asking potentially sensitive questions. This is where curiosity invitations offer remarkable effectiveness. When addressing difficult topics, prefacing your question with the simple phrase, "I'm curious," creates what communication researchers call a psychological buffer zone. This phrasing signals that you're not making accusations or demanding justifications, you're genuinely seeking understanding. The result is dramatically reduced defensiveness and increased openness from the person you're addressing. Conversation analysis research from 2021 revealed that responses to questions prefaced with "I'm curious" were 30% longer and contained significantly higher levels of personal disclosure than responses to direct questions without this preface. The phrase effectively lowers social threat, creating psychological safety that encourages deeper sharing. For example, rather than asking, "Why didn't you meet the deadline?" which can sound accusatory, try, "I'm curious about what factors affected the timeline on this project." The core question remains similar, but the emotional impact differs dramatically. The curiosity preface transforms what might feel like an interrogation into an invitation for shared exploration. The third linguistic tool in your questioning arsenal might seem almost too simple to be effective: the power of the word "because." When making requests, adding even a brief justification dramatically increases compliance rates. This phenomenon, first documented in the classic copy machine experiment and replicated numerous times since, reveals that people are significantly more likely to agree to requests when given any reason, even if that reason is relatively uninformative. In the original study, people waiting to use a copy machine were more likely to allow someone to cut in line when the request included a "because" statement, even if the reason was as trivial as "because I need to make copies." Recent replications show compliance jumping from approximately 60% to 90% when requests include any justification introduced by "because." This "because" effect works by activating what psychologists call an automatic reasoning shortcut. The mere presence of a justification signals reasonableness and consideration, triggering an instinctive positive response. When you phrase requests as, "Would you mind reviewing this document by tomorrow because it affects our planning meeting?" rather than simply, "Would you mind reviewing this document by tomorrow?" you substantially increase the likelihood of agreement. Understanding the cognitive mechanics behind these questioning techniques deepens their impact. Solution-focused questions like, "How might we?" activate the brain's default mode network, regions associated with imagination, creativity, and future-oriented thinking. This neural network enables mental simulation of possibilities rather than analysis of problems, expanding the solution space available to you and others. Similarly, curiosity-based language, "I'm curious," helps down-regulate the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center. When people perceive questions as threatening or accusatory, the amygdala activates, triggering defensive responses that shut down higher cognitive functions. Curiosity phrasing creates an invitational tone that keeps these threat circuits quiet, maintaining access to the prefrontal cortex where thoughtful, nuanced responses originate. To implement these insights practically, consider adopting the three-layer ladder approach to questioning. This framework moves from broad, exploratory questions to progressively narrower, action-oriented ones. Begin with expansive questions that open possibilities. What opportunities do we see in this situation? Move to focusing questions that narrow options. Which of these approaches seems most promising? Conclude with action questions that prompt commitment. What specific steps will move this forward? This questioning sequence guides thinking from divergent exploration to convergent decision-making, creating a natural flow toward action while still capturing creative possibilities. For making effective requests, develop a set of because justification templates tailored to common situations. These might include phrases like, "Because it would help the team meet our deadline," "Because your perspective would be particularly valuable," or "Because it aligns with our key priorities." Having these justification templates ready makes incorporating the because effect into daily communication effortless. Creating a curiosity kickoff meeting agenda provides another practical application. Begin meetings with explicitly curiosity-framed questions. "I'm curious what progress everyone has made since we last met," or "I'm curious what challenges have emerged that we should address together." This questioning approach sets a tone of psychological safety and collaborative exploration from the outset. Sustaining an inquiry-rich communication style requires ongoing attention and practice. Incorporate daily reflection prompts into your routine. Questions like, "What surprised me today?" or "What am I curious about regarding tomorrow's challenges?" These self-directed inquiries maintain your questioning muscles even when alone. Consider establishing peer question exchange circles where colleagues or friends practice crafting powerful questions together and provide feedback on questioning effectiveness. These groups can track metrics like idea generation, solution development speed, and relational warmth to measure the impact of improved questioning skills. To integrate these concepts immediately, try the complaint-to-question rewrite drill. Take 3 recent complaints or criticisms you've expressed and rewrite each as a solution-focused question. For example, "This process is inefficient and wastes time," becomes, "How might we streamline this process to better respect everyone's time?" This exercise transforms negative energy into constructive inquiry. The "I'm curious" challenge offers another practical starting point. Commit to using this phrase at least 3 times daily in conversations, especially when addressing potentially sensitive topics. Track how responses differ compared to your usual questioning approach. Finally, maintain a justified request log documenting requests you make that include because statements, noting compliance rates and relationship impacts. This systematic tracking helps reinforce the effectiveness of this simple linguistic tool. As you integrate these questioning techniques into your daily communication, you'll notice profound shifts in both your thinking and your interactions with others. Problems that once seemed intractable begin to yield to creative solutions. Conversations that might have turned defensive instead deepen understanding. Requests that previously met resistance now receive willing cooperation. The language of inquiry represents a fundamental shift from telling to asking, from assuming to exploring, from directing to inviting. This shift doesn't diminish your influence, it magnifies it by engaging others' thinking and agency rather than triggering their resistance. Through skillful questioning, you create the conditions for genuine collaboration and discovery. Yet powerful as questions may be, they represent just one dimension of interpersonal linguistic effectiveness. Beyond inquiry lies another crucial aspect of communication, one that determines whether people feel genuinely seen and valued in their interactions with you. The next chapter reveals a set of verbal patterns so subtle most people never consciously notice them, yet so powerful they can transform casual exchanges into moments of authentic connection and trust. Chapter 6, Rapport. Have you ever met someone who seemed to get you almost immediately? Within minutes of conversation, you felt understood, valued, and strangely comfortable, as if you'd known this person for years rather than moments. This instant connection wasn't accidental or magical, it was linguistic. We often attribute relationship quality to abstract concepts like chemistry or compatibility, overlooking the specific verbal exchanges that actually create connection. Yet beneath the surface of every meaningful relationship, whether personal or professional, runs a current of linguistic patterns that either strengthen or weaken bonds between people. These patterns operate largely outside conscious awareness, yet their impact on trust, collaboration, and mutual understanding is profound. This chapter explores a dimension of language that directly shapes the quality of your relationships, the subtle verbal patterns that create what psychologists call rapport. Beyond merely communicating information, these linguistic techniques establish resonance between people, a sense of being in sync that forms the foundation for trust, influence, and meaningful connection. At the heart of rapport-building language lies a phenomenon so fundamental to human interaction that we rarely notice it, the tendency to synchronize with others. Watch any engaged conversation and you'll observe a fascinating dance. Speakers unconsciously matching each other's pace, volume, posture, and even breathing patterns. This natural synchronization creates a sense of harmony and mutual understanding. What most people don't realize is that this synchronization can be deliberately enhanced through specific linguistic choices. The practice of conversational mirroring, intentionally aligning certain aspects of your communication with your conversation partner, activates powerful neural mechanisms that foster connection. When you subtly match another person's speaking tempo, echo keywords they've used, or adopt similar but not identical gestures, you activate what neuroscientists call mirror neuron networks, brain systems that create a sense of resonance between people. These neural circuits, originally discovered in studies of motor imitation, play a crucial role in empathy and social bonding. A 2023 laboratory study demonstrated this effect convincingly. Researchers found a 25% increase in perceived empathy ratings when speakers intentionally echoed one core word from their partner's previous statement approximately every 30 seconds. Participants didn't consciously notice this word matching but reported feeling deeply understood by partners who employed this technique. The key to effective mirroring lies in subtlety and selectivity. Rather than mimicking everything, which can feel artificial or mocking, focus on matching specific elements, the general pace of speech, key nouns or phrases that seem important to the other person, and overall energy level. This selective alignment creates a sense of being on the same wavelength without seeming contrived. Try this experiment. In your next conversation, notice your partner's speaking tempo. Are they quick and energetic or measured and thoughtful? Gently adjust your pace to more closely match theirs. Also, listen for nouns or phrases they repeat, then incorporate these same words naturally into your responses. You'll likely notice an immediate deepening of connection, even if the other person can't articulate why they suddenly feel more understood. But mirroring represents just one dimension of rapport-building language. Equally powerful is what might be called the gratitude dialect, specific ways of expressing appreciation that go far beyond generic thanks. Most expressions of gratitude are vague and habitual. Thanks for your help, or I appreciate it. These phrases check the social box of acknowledgement but miss the opportunity to strengthen relationship bonds. By contrast, gratitude statements that specifically name the behavior being appreciated create much stronger positive reinforcement and deeper connection. Compare, "Thanks for your help on the project," with "I appreciate how you stayed late to help me troubleshoot those technical issues because it made a huge difference in meeting our deadline." The second version doesn't just acknowledge, it specifically names the action, connects it to impact, and reinforces the behavior through detailed recognition. Workplace research from 2022 revealed that employees receiving behavior-specific gratitude reported 21% higher intrinsic motivation compared to those hearing generic thanks. The specificity matters because it demonstrates genuine attention and reinforces exactly which behaviors are valued, creating clear pathways for continued positive interaction. The structure of effective gratitude statements follows a simple pattern. Name the specific action, plus connect to its impact, plus add a because statement that links to broader meaning. This formula transforms routine thanks into powerful relationship-building moments that reinforce positive behaviors while deepening mutual respect. The third linguistic tool for building rapport involves how you respond when others share good news, what psychologists call capitalization attempts. When someone tells you about a positive event in their life, your response dramatically affects both their experience of that event and the quality of your relationship. Research identifies 4 possible response styles to good news: active constructive, enthusiastic, elaborative; passive constructive, understated support; active destructive, finding problems; and passive destructive, ignoring or changing the subject. Of these, only active constructive responses, those that show genuine enthusiasm and encourage elaboration, strengthen relationships. For example, if a colleague mentions receiving praise from a client, an active constructive response might be, "That's fantastic! What exactly did they appreciate about your work? You must feel really good about the effort you put into that project." This response shows enthusiasm, asks for details, and acknowledges feelings, all linguistic markers that amplify the positive experience. A 1-month study with couples demonstrated that partners trained in active constructive responding experienced a remarkable 39% boost in relationship satisfaction compared to control groups. This single linguistic shift, responding more enthusiastically to others' good news, created measurable improvements in relationship quality in just 4 weeks. Understanding the psychology behind these linguistic patterns deepens their impact. When you offer specific recognition or respond enthusiastically to others' successes, you activate the brain's reward circuitry. Dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and motivation, is released during moments of social recognition, creating positive associations with both the interaction and your relationship. This social reward mechanism explains why behavior-specific praise is so much more effective than generic compliments. Detailed recognition provides precise feedback about which actions led to positive outcomes, creating clear pathways for the brain's reward prediction systems. The specificity literally helps the other person's brain learn what behaviors to repeat for future social rewards. Similarly, the capitalization effect occurs when sharing good news with an enthusiastic responder. This interaction creates neural and hormonal markers of shared joy, including oxytocin release, which promotes bonding and trust. By responding actively and constructively to others' positive experiences, you literally help wire their brains to associate you with positive emotions. To implement these insights practically, develop a 3-step active constructive script for responding to good news. Express genuine enthusiasm, ask for details that help the person relive the positive experience, and validate the emotions associated with their achievement. This structured response ensures you consistently strengthen bonds when others share successes. Create gratitude dialect email templates that follow the specific action plus impact because structure for common workplace scenarios. Having these templates ready makes it easier to send meaningful appreciation rather than defaulting to generic thanks. Remember that timing matters. Gratitude expressed immediately after the behavior has the strongest reinforcing effect. Before important meetings or conversations, practice mirroring warm-up drills to heighten your awareness of pace, key terminology, and energy levels. These brief exercises sensitize you to the subtle aspects of others' communication styles that you can selectively mirror for enhanced rapport. Embedding these rapport-building language patterns into daily routines ensures consistent practice. Consider implementing win-share start-of-day huddles, where team members briefly share recent successes, creating regular opportunities for active, constructive responding. End-of-week gratitude roundtables provide structured time for specific appreciation, strengthening team bonds through the gratitude dialect. Track engagement scores and relationship quality metrics over time to measure the impact of these linguistic shifts. Many people are surprised to discover how dramatically these subtle verbal patterns affect collaboration quality, trust levels, and overall relationship satisfaction. For immediate implementation, try these practical exercises. Schedule a 15-minute mirroring practice with a friend or colleague, focusing specifically on matching speaking pace and echoing key nouns. Notice how this deliberate synchronization affects the quality of your connection. Commit to sending one daily gratitude dialect message that follows the specific action plus impact plus because structure. Direct these messages to different people in your personal and professional life, noting how the specificity affects their response compared to generic thanks. Finally, maintain an active constructive response journal documenting opportunities to respond enthusiastically to others' good news. Record both the situation and your specific response, then track how these interactions affect relationship quality over time. As you integrate these linguistic patterns into your daily communications, you'll notice a profound shift in how people respond to you. Conversations become more engaging and productive. Trust develops more rapidly. Collaboration flows more naturally. These changes occur not because you're manipulating others, but because you're creating the conditions for genuine connection through specific verbal choices. The language of rapport represents a fundamental shift from transactional to relational communication, from merely exchanging information to creating resonance between people. This shift doesn't require personality transformation or complex techniques. It involves simple, learnable linguistic patterns that anyone can master with practice and awareness. Yet powerful as these connection-building verbal patterns may be, they represent just one dimension of relational effectiveness. Beyond creating rapport lies the equally crucial challenge of maintaining harmony when tensions rise and conflicts emerge. The next chapter reveals a set of linguistic tools so counterintuitive they challenge conventional wisdom about communication, yet so effective they can transform even the most heated exchanges into opportunities for deeper understanding and resolution. Chapter 7, Harmony. Don't slam the door. Stop interrupting me. Don't forget the meeting this afternoon. What do these common phrases have in common? They all tell someone what not to do rather than what to do. They focus on the negative behavior rather than the desired alternative. And most importantly, they often achieve precisely the opposite of what we intend. Think about it. When someone says, "Don't think about a pink elephant," what immediately pops into your mind? A pink elephant, of course. Our brains process negations in a peculiar way. We must first imagine the very thing we're being told to avoid before we can negate it. This cognitive quirk has profound implications for how we communicate, especially during moments of tension or conflict. This chapter explores a dimension of language that becomes most crucial exactly when communication feels most challenging, during conflicts, after mistakes, and amid self-doubt. The verbal patterns you employ in these difficult moments can either escalate tension or restore balance, deepen rifts or build bridges, amplify shame or nurture resilience. These patterns create what might be called harmony, not the absence of discord, but the skillful navigation of it through precise linguistic choices. At the heart of harmonious communication lies a counterintuitive principle. What you focus on expands. When your language centers on problems, unwanted behaviors, or past mistakes, you inadvertently amplify them in both your attention and the listener's. By contrast, when your words highlight solutions, desired behaviors, and future possibilities, you create clear pathways toward resolution and understanding. This principle manifests most clearly in what communication researchers call negation-free requests, statements that specify what you want rather than what you don't want. Compare "don't be late" with "please arrive by 2 p.m." The first creates a mental image of lateness before attempting to negate it. The second provides a clear, actionable target for the brain to aim toward. This distinction isn't merely philosophical, it produces measurable behavioral differences. Parent-child communication research from 2021 revealed that replacing negation-based instructions, "don't yell," with affirmative alternatives, "use your indoor voice," halved the number of repeated prompts needed within just 1 week. The affirmative phrasing provided clearer guidance for the brain to follow, reducing confusion and resistance. The effectiveness of negation-free requests stems from how our brains process language. When you tell someone what not to do, you create what psychologists call an ironic process. The mental control system must continuously monitor for the forbidden action, paradoxically keeping it in working memory. By contrast, affirmative instructions create a single, clear target for attention, streamlining cognitive processing and facilitating compliance. Try this experiment. For 1 day, monitor your requests to others and to yourself. How often do you phrase them as negations? When you catch yourself saying "don't forget" or "stop doing," pause and reformulate. "Remember to" or "please do" instead. Notice how this shift feels, and more importantly, observe how it affects the response you receive. But harmony-creating language extends beyond how we make requests. Equally important is how we address mistakes and misunderstandings, our own and others. This is where the concept of minimal force apologies offers surprising power. Traditional advice about apologies often emphasizes elaborate expressions of regret and self-criticism. "I'm so sorry. That was completely thoughtless of me. I feel terrible about it." While well-intentioned, such effusive apologies can actually impede resolution by centering the apologizer's feelings rather than the impact on the other person. They can also damage the apologizer's sense of self-worth, creating shame rather than learning. Minimal force apologies take a different approach. They acknowledge impact without excessive self-flagellation, offer a clear remedy, and maintain the dignity of both parties. The structure is simple yet powerful. Acknowledge what happened, recognize its effect on the other person, offer a specific remedy, and express appreciation for the relationship. For example, instead of "I'm so sorry for missing our meeting. I'm such a disorganized mess. It was inexcusable," try "I missed our scheduled meeting yesterday. I understand that affected your ability to move forward with the project. I've blocked time tomorrow at 10 a.m. if that works for you, and I've set a calendar alert to prevent this from happening again. I value our working relationship and appreciate your flexibility." A 2024 negotiation study demonstrated that minimal force apologies shortened dispute resolution time by 18% compared to either elaborate self-criticism or defensive justification. The minimal force approach restored trust while preserving the apologizer's self-respect, creating conditions for genuine resolution rather than lingering resentment or shame. This balanced approach works because it separates intent from impact, acknowledging the effect of an action without assuming malicious motivation. It also offers a specific remedy rather than vague promises, creating a clear path forward rather than dwelling on the past mistake. Perhaps most surprisingly, the language patterns that create harmony with others find their most powerful application in how we speak to ourselves. Our inner dialogues, the running commentary we maintain about our own actions, choices, and worth, profoundly affect our emotional resilience and ability to navigate challenges. For many people, this inner dialogue is harshly critical. "I'm such an idiot. I always mess things up. I'll never get this right. These self-directed verbal attacks trigger the brain's threat response system just as effectively as external criticism, creating patterns of shame, rumination, and avoidance that undermine growth and well-being. Self-compassion mantras offer an alternative, gentle, supportive phrases that activate the brain's soothing system rather than its threat circuits. These aren't empty affirmations or denial of mistakes. They're balanced acknowledgments that combine honesty with kindness, much as you might speak to a valued friend who is struggling. Functional MRI research from 2022 revealed that self-compassionate phrases like, "This is difficult, but I'm doing my best," or "May I be patient with myself as I learn," measurably reduced amygdala activity associated with threat and fear, while increasing activation in brain regions associated with self-soothing and perspective-taking. The linguistic shift literally changed the brain's physiological response to challenges and setbacks. This finding aligns with polyvagal theory, a neurophysiological framework explaining how verbal cues affect our autonomic nervous system. Harsh self-talk triggers sympathetic activation, fight or flight, while compassionate language activates the ventral vagal complex, promoting a state of calm, connected presence. The words you use in your inner dialogue don't just reflect your emotional state, they actively create it through these neurophysiological pathways. To implement these insights practically, develop a request conversion table that translates common negations into affirmative alternatives. For instance, "Don't be late" becomes "Please arrive 5 minutes early," and "Stop interrupting" becomes "Please wait until I've finished my thought." Having these translations ready makes it easier to communicate clearly, especially during stressful moments when default patterns tend to emerge. Create a 4-sentence minimal force apology script following this template. Acknowledge what happened, plus recognize its effect, plus offer a specific remedy, plus express appreciation for the relationship. Practice this structure until it becomes second nature, allowing you to address mistakes effectively without excessive self-criticism or defensive justification. For internal harmony, develop a self-compassion break, a 60-second guided wording practice for moments of stress or self-criticism. This might include phrases like, "This is a moment of difficulty," acknowledging reality. Many people feel this way, recognizing common humanity. And, "May I be kind to myself right now," offering self-kindness. This brief linguistic intervention can interrupt negative spirals and restore emotional balance. Embedding these harmony-creating language patterns into daily routines ensures consistent practice. Consider implementing weekly communication retros with partners or team members, reviewing recent interactions to identify opportunities for more harmonious language. Place self-kindness anchor phrases on your phone lock screen as regular reminders to speak to yourself with the same compassion you would offer a friend. Track progress markers like conflict frequency, resolution speed, and self-talk tone to measure the impact of these linguistic shifts. Many people are surprised to discover how dramatically these verbal patterns affect both relationship quality and emotional resilience. For immediate implementation, conduct a negation-free audit of your speech for 1 day, noting each time you use "don't," "stop," or "quit" in a request. Challenge yourself to reformulate these as affirmative instructions, then observe the difference in response. Write and deliver one minimal force apology using the 4-sentence structure, noting how it affects both your own emotional state and the recipient's reaction. Finally, commit to a 7-day self-compassion mantra practice, selecting 3 supportive phrases to repeat during moments of difficulty or self-criticism. Track how this linguistic shift affects your emotional resilience and problem-solving capacity over the week. As you integrate these harmony-creating verbal patterns into your daily communications, you'll notice a profound shift in both your relationships and your inner experience. Conflicts resolve more quickly and constructively. Mistakes become opportunities for learning rather than sources of shame. Your inner dialogue becomes a source of support rather than criticism. These changes occur not through avoiding difficult situations, but through navigating them with linguistic precision and balance. The language of harmony represents a fundamental shift from reactive to intentional communication, from verbal patterns that escalate tension to those that restore balance. This shift doesn't require avoiding difficult topics or suppressing authentic feelings. It involves expressing needs, addressing mistakes, and processing emotions in ways that maintain dignity and connection for all involved. Yet powerful as these harmony-creating verbal patterns may be, they address primarily the present moment, current conflicts, recent mistakes, immediate emotions. Beyond managing the present lies the equally crucial challenge of shaping how you interpret your past and envision your future. The next chapter unveils a linguistic dimension so fundamental it literally constructs your sense of identity and possibility, the stories you tell about who you are, where you've been, and what you might become. Chapter 8, Storycraft. I never catch a break. Everything always falls apart in the end. That's just my luck. Have you ever caught yourself repeating phrases like these? They seem like simple observations about your experiences, but they're actually much more powerful. These brief statements aren't just describing your reality, they're creating it. They represent the tip of a much larger linguistic iceberg, the stories you tell yourself about who you are, what you're capable of, and why things happen the way they do. We humans are, at our core, storytelling creatures. We don't experience life as a random series of events, but as meaningful narratives with beginnings, middles, and ends. These narratives don't just organize our memories, they actively shape our identities, guide our decisions, and color our emotional responses to everything we encounter. Most importantly, they determine what we believe is possible for our future. This chapter explores perhaps the most fundamental dimension of language, the power to craft the stories that define your life. Beyond individual words and phrases lies the broader architecture of narrative, the overarching structures that give meaning to your experiences and direction to your choices. By understanding and deliberately shaping these linguistic frameworks, you gain access to a level of personal authorship few people ever fully realize. At the heart of this narrative dimension lies what psychologists call narrative identity, the internalized, evolving story of your life that integrates your reconstructed past, perceived present, and imagined future. This isn't just abstract theory. Research shows that the specific linguistic patterns in your personal narratives strongly predict your psychological well-being, resilience, and even life outcomes. Consider how you typically frame setbacks or difficulties. Do you cast them as permanent stains? This ruined everything. As evidence of personal deficiency? I always mess up. Or as temporary challenges that ultimately led to growth? That difficult period taught me something essential. These aren't just different ways of describing the same events. They represent fundamentally different narrative structures that create different psychological realities. Psychologists distinguish between what they call contamination narratives, where good situations turn bad, and redemption narratives, where challenges lead to positive outcomes or insights. A 2023 longitudinal study found that participants who deliberately rewrote their contaminated life stories into redemption narratives reported significant gains in optimism that persisted at 6-week follow-up. Simply by recasting the same life events in a different narrative frame, these individuals experienced measurable improvements in their outlook and emotional well-being. This narrative editing process isn't about denying difficulties or pretending everything is perfect. Rather, it involves acknowledging challenges while emphasizing agency, growth, and meaning. A redemptive narrative typically includes 4 key elements: honest acknowledgement of the setback, recognition of your own agency in responding, identification of growth or learning, and connection to how this experience enables you to contribute to others. For example, instead of, "I failed that project because I'm not cut out for leadership," a redemptive framing might be, "That project presented unexpected challenges that initially overwhelmed me. I chose to seek mentorship and develop new skills rather than giving up. Through that process, I discovered strengths I hadn't recognized before. Now I can guide others through similar situations with both expertise and empathy." The first narrative ends with failure and limitation. The second transforms the same experience into a story of growth and contribution. Both acknowledge difficulty, but they create vastly different implications for identity and future action. Identifying your own limiting narratives requires attentive listening to your habitual language patterns. Common deficit scripts include statements like, "I'm just not a math person," "I'm unlucky in relationships," or "I always crack under pressure." These narratives often contain absolutist language, words like always, never, everyone, or no one, that frame experiences as universal and unchangeable rather than specific and temporary. Once you've identified these limiting narratives, you can begin the process of deliberate editing. This doesn't mean fabricating false positives or denying genuine challenges. Instead, it involves expanding the story to include elements that were present but overlooked, moments of choice, instances of perseverance, lessons learned, or strengths discovered. The goal is a more complete and empowering account, not a fictional one. But narrative identity represents just one aspect of Storycraft. Equally powerful is the strategic use of metaphor, the linguistic device that allows us to understand one thing in terms of another. Metaphors aren't merely poetic flourishes. They're fundamental cognitive tools that shape how we conceptualize abstract concepts and complex goals. When you describe your career as a journey, your team as a family, or your mind as a garden, you're not just using colorful language, you're activating specific neural frameworks that influence how you think and act. Neuroscience research reveals that metaphors trigger sensory-motor brain regions associated with physical experiences, making abstract concepts more concrete and actionable. A 2024 memory experiment demonstrated this effect convincingly. Participants who formulated goals using rich metaphors, "My savings plan is building a financial fortress," recalled their intentions 42% more accurately after 1 week than those using literal descriptions. "My savings plan is putting aside money regularly." The metaphorical framing created stronger memory traces by linking abstract goals to concrete, sensory-rich imagery. The power of metaphor lies in its ability to transfer understanding from familiar domains, like physical journeys or structures, to more abstract domains, like personal development or financial planning. This mapping process doesn't just aid comprehension, it activates emotional and motivational systems that literal language often fails to engage. Designing purposeful metaphors for your key goals and challenges involves identifying appropriate source domains that capture the essential qualities you want to emphasize. If your goal requires steady, incremental progress, a journey or growth metaphor might be most fitting. If it demands protection of resources, a fortress or container metaphor might be more appropriate. The key is selecting imagery that resonates emotionally while highlighting the aspects most relevant to successful action. Beyond narrative structure and metaphorical framing, a third dimension of Storycraft involves the strategic arrangement of words within sentences, what might be called serial position framing. The order in which information appears significantly affects what people remember and act upon due to well-established primacy and recency effects in cognitive processing. Instruction design research from 2021 revealed that placing action verbs at the beginning of sentences reduced task errors by 31% compared to the same instructions with verbs positioned later. When critical actions appeared early in sentences, readers were significantly more likely to remember and implement them correctly. This finding has practical implications for any communication where you want to ensure follow-through. By positioning decisive verbs at the beginning of sentences, "Submit the report by Friday," rather than "The report needs to be submitted by Friday," you leverage primacy effects to enhance memory and action. This principle applies equally to emails, instructions, presentations, and even self-directed notes. Similarly, headline compression, crafting concise, action-oriented titles and subject lines, significantly affects attention and recall. The first few words people encounter create a cognitive frame that influences how they process everything that follows. By front-loading key actions and outcomes in your headlines and openings, you direct attention toward what matters most. Integrating these Storycraft principles into your daily communication requires consistent practice and reflection. Consider implementing a monthly narrative review ritual where you examine your current personal stories, identify limiting narratives, and consciously develop more empowering alternatives. This isn't about denying reality, but about recognizing the multiple valid interpretations available for any set of experiences. Create metaphor boards for your long-term goals, visual collections of images and phrases that capture the essence of your aspirations in concrete, sensory-rich terms. These boards serve as regular reminders of your metaphorical framing, reinforcing the neural pathways that connect abstract aims to vivid imagery. Develop a habitual action-first email practice, deliberately restructuring your written communications to position key verbs and requests at the beginning of sentences. This simple shift significantly increases the likelihood that recipients will remember and act on your most important points. For immediate implementation, try these practical exercises. Complete a limiting to redemptive story rewrite exercise, selecting one challenging experience from your past and deliberately recasting it to emphasize agency, growth, and meaning. Notice how this linguistic reframing affects your emotional response to the memory and your sense of possibility going forward. Create a signature goal metaphor for one important aspiration, selecting imagery that captures both the essence of the goal and the process required to achieve it. Elaborate this metaphor with sensory details that make it vivid and memorable, then incorporate it into your daily reflections on this goal. Finally, undertake a serial position email makeover challenge, revising 3 recent emails to position key actions and requests at the beginning of sentences and paragraphs. Compare the response rates and follow-through on these restructured communications with your typical results. As you integrate these Storycraft principles into your daily language, you'll notice a profound shift in how you relate to your experiences, goals, and identity. The stories you tell, to yourself and others, will increasingly support your growth and resilience rather than limiting your possibilities. The metaphors you employ will make abstract aspirations more concrete and motivating. The structure of your communications will enhance clarity and follow-through. These changes occur not through denying reality or fabricating false positives, but through recognizing the legitimate choices available in how you frame and interpret your experiences. The events of your life don't dictate the story of your life. Your language does. By consciously crafting that language, you reclaim authorship of your identity and your future. Yet powerful as these narrative tools may be, they address primarily the architecture of meaning, how you interpret experiences and conceptualize goals. Beyond crafting compelling stories lies the equally crucial challenge of translating insights into consistent action. The final chapter reveals a set of linguistic patterns so practical they bridge the gap between knowing and doing, verbal frameworks that convert understanding into momentum, ensuring that your newly crafted stories become lived realities rather than merely appealing ideas. Chapter 9, Momentum. I really should exercise more. I'm going to start that project soon. I know I need to have that difficult conversation. These statements sound productive. They express good intentions and awareness of important actions. Yet somehow, days and weeks later, the exercise routine remains theoretical, the project unstarted, the conversation avoided. Why do our best intentions so often fail to translate into consistent action? The gap between knowing and doing represents one of the most frustrating aspects of personal development. We read books, attend workshops, and gain valuable insights, yet find ourselves stuck in the same patterns, unable to convert understanding into lasting change. This final challenge is where most self-improvement efforts ultimately falter. What if this gap isn't primarily about willpower or motivation, but about language? What if specific verbal patterns could bridge the divide between insight and action, creating momentum that carries you from good intentions to consistent implementation? This chapter explores precisely that possibility, how certain linguistic frameworks can transform fleeting inspiration into sustained momentum. Throughout this book, you've discovered how language shapes your perceptions, emotions, relationships, and identity. Now we turn to perhaps the most practical application: how specific verbal patterns can automate behavior change by bypassing the limitations of conscious willpower and creating direct pathways from intention to action. At the heart of this approach lies a deceptively simple linguistic structure: the implementation intention. Unlike vague aspirations, "I want to exercise more," or even specific goals, "I'll work out 3 times a week," implementation intentions use precise if-then phrasing to link situational cues with immediate actions. If it's Monday at 7 a.m., then I'll put on my running shoes and go for a 20-minute jog. This linguistic structure might seem trivial, merely adding specificity to a goal statement, yet its impact on behavior is remarkable. A comprehensive 2023 meta-analysis examining 184 experiments confirmed that implementation intentions double goal completion rates compared with intentions alone. This effect holds across diverse domains, including health behaviors, academic performance, environmental actions, and interpersonal commitments. The power of implementation intentions stems from how they engage cognitive processes. Traditional goal statements rely on conscious remembering and decision-making, both limited resources easily depleted by stress, fatigue, or competing demands. By contrast, if-then scripts create automatic action triggers that bypass these limitations. When the specified situation occurs, the linked action initiates with minimal conscious effort, similar to how habitual behaviors unfold. Crafting effective implementation intentions involves 2 key elements: identifying precise situational cues and specifying concrete actions. The cues should be unmistakable and inevitable, specific times, locations, or events that reliably occur in your daily life. The actions should be immediate, specific, and physically executable, not vague intentions but concrete behaviors you can perform without further deliberation. For example, rather than, "If I feel stressed, I'll meditate," which requires you to recognize stress and then decide how to meditate, try, "If I sit down at my desk in the morning, then I'll open the meditation app and complete a 5-minute session before checking email." The latter links a specific situation, sitting at your desk, to a concrete action sequence, creating an automatic behavior chain. Finding the right granularity balance proves crucial for implementation intentions. Steps that are too small may seem trivial and fail to create meaningful progress, while steps that are too large may overwhelm and trigger avoidance. The ideal implementation intention specifies an action small enough to feel doable, yet substantial enough to create momentum toward your larger goal. But implementation intentions represent just one linguistic tool for creating momentum. Equally powerful is the strategic use of pronouns in self-talk, particularly during challenging moments when emotions might otherwise derail your efforts. Most of us address ourselves in first person: "I need to calm down," or "I can handle this." Research suggests that shifting to second person, "You need to calm down," or third person, "James needs to calm down," creates psychological distance that improves emotional regulation and performance under pressure. A 2022 Stress Lab study demonstrated this effect convincingly. Participants who used second-person self-talk during challenging tasks showed lower heart rate variability, a physiological marker of stress, and performed 15% better on complex problem-solving compared to those using first-person self-talk. The pronoun shift created sufficient psychological distance to reduce emotional reactivity while maintaining engagement with the task. This self-distancing language works by activating the same psychological mechanisms we use when advising friends. When you're caught in emotional turbulence, first-person perspective keeps you immersed in those feelings. Second or third person creates a subtle observer perspective, enough distance to see options and maintain composure without disconnecting from the situation. Developing snap scripts for high-pressure moments provides a practical application of this research. These are brief, pre-formulated self-coaching statements using second-person pronouns that you can deploy when emotions threaten to derail your momentum. You've prepared thoroughly for this presentation. Take a deep breath, focus on your key points, and speak clearly. Having these scripts ready before challenging situations ensures you can access helpful self-talk precisely when you need it most. The third linguistic tool for maintaining momentum involves how you communicate about your understanding and plans, particularly when working with others. Epistemic humility phrases signal openness to feedback and alternative perspectives, creating collaborative momentum rather than rigid adherence to potentially flawed initial ideas. Statements like, "Here's how I understand the situation," or "based on what I know so far," frame your contributions as provisional rather than definitive. This linguistic humility doesn't undermine your credibility. Rather, it creates space for dialogue and refinement, preventing the momentum-killing effects of defensive positioning or premature certainty. Organizational research from 2024 found that project teams adopting humility phrases in daily stand-up meetings logged 30% fewer miscommunication errors compared to teams using more definitive language. The humble framing facilitated course corrections and clarifications that kept projects moving forward rather than stalling due to misalignments or misunderstandings. This approach works because it separates your ideas from your identity. When you present thoughts as definitive, this is how it works. Any challenge feels like a personal critique. Humility phrasing creates psychological space between you and your current understanding, allowing ideas to evolve without threatening your sense of competence or worth. Implementing these momentum-creating language patterns requires systematic practice and reinforcement. Consider establishing a weekly implementation intention review where you evaluate your existing if-then scripts, refine those that aren't working, and create new ones for upcoming priorities. This regular review ensures your automatic action triggers remain aligned with your evolving goals and circumstances. Create progress visualization dashboards that translate abstract goals into concrete markers of advancement. These visual representations provide immediate feedback on your momentum, reinforcing successful implementation while highlighting areas needing adjustment. The language you use in these dashboards matters. Frame progress in terms of specific actions completed rather than vague assessments of success or failure. Establishing accountability pairs with specific language protocols further reinforces momentum. These partnerships work best when structured around three linguistic elements: clear commitments, "I will complete X by Y time," honest progress reports without excuse-making language, and forward-focused planning rather than dwelling on missed targets. The right verbal frameworks transform accountability from punitive oversight to supportive collaboration. As you master these momentum-creating language patterns, you can scale them to increasingly ambitious goals. Chaining multiple if-then plans creates implementation pathways for complex projects, breaking larger objectives into sequenced action triggers that maintain forward motion. Each completed step activates the next, creating a linguistic domino effect that carries you through the entire process. Self-distancing becomes particularly valuable for emotional endurance during extended efforts. When pursuing long-term goals, motivation inevitably fluctuates and obstacles arise. Second-person self-coaching provides the psychological perspective needed to weather these challenges without abandoning your objectives. You expected this difficult phase. Remember why this matters to you and focus on just the next step. Humble leadership language extends momentum beyond individual efforts to team achievements. By modeling epistemic humility in group settings, you create an environment where ideas can evolve, mistakes can be acknowledged without shame, and collective wisdom can emerge. Phrases like, "I'm thinking X, but I may be missing something important," invite contributions that accelerate progress rather than shutting down dialogue with premature certainty. To integrate these concepts immediately, try these practical exercises. Write 3 if-then scripts for one priority goal, identifying specific situational cues and linking them to concrete actions. Be precise about both the trigger conditions and the behaviors you'll initiate when those conditions occur. Commit to a 48-hour second-person self-talk experiment, deliberately addressing yourself as you during challenging moments. Notice how this pronoun shift affects your emotional regulation and problem-solving capacity compared to your usual first-person self-talk. Finally, use humility framing in your next collaborative session, consciously incorporating phrases that signal openness to alternative perspectives and additional information. Note how this linguistic approach affects group dynamics and idea development compared to more definitive statement patterns. As you integrate these momentum-creating verbal patterns into your daily life, you'll experience a profound shift in how consistently you translate intentions into actions. The gap between knowing and doing will narrow, not through heroic willpower or motivation hacks, but through linguistic structures that align with how your brain naturally processes information and initiates behavior. This final dimension of linguistic mastery completes the transformation you began in Chapter 1. You've moved from reframing challenges to cultivating growth, from claiming agency to harnessing time, from asking powerful questions to building rapport, from creating harmony to crafting identity narratives. Now, with momentum-creating language, you close the circle, ensuring that your insights become lived experience rather than merely interesting ideas. The journey you've undertaken through these chapters represents more than a collection of linguistic techniques. It constitutes a comprehensive language operating system, an integrated approach to how you think, communicate, and act. Each chapter builds upon the previous ones, creating a verbal framework that supports every aspect of your development and effectiveness. Reframing provides the emotional foundation by transforming threats into challenges. Growth language installs the belief that improvement is possible. Agency language positions you as the author of your experience. Timecraft connects present actions to future outcomes. Inquiry unlocks creativity and collaboration. Rapport strengthens relationships through verbal resonance. Harmony maintains balance during conflict. Storycraft shapes your identity and aspirations. And finally, momentum bridges the gap between insight and action. Together, these linguistic dimensions create a self-reinforcing system that elevates every aspect of your life, not through manipulation or artificial positivity, but through verbal patterns that align with how your brain naturally processes information, regulates emotion, and initiates behavior. The most profound insight from this exploration may be this: language isn't merely descriptive, it's generative. The words you choose don't just reflect your reality, they create it. By consciously shaping your linguistic patterns, you literally speak a new reality into existence. One word, one phrase, one conversation at a time. This understanding places extraordinary power in your hands. Every verbal choice becomes an opportunity to create the life you want, rather than merely describing the life you have. Each conversation becomes a chance to build the relationships you desire, rather than reinforcing patterns you've fallen into. Every self-directed thought becomes a moment to nurture the identity you're growing into, rather than reinforcing limitations you've accepted. The transformation available through linguistic mastery isn't instantaneous or effortless. It requires consistent attention, practice, and refinement. You'll still experience setbacks and moments when old verbal patterns reassert themselves. But with each deliberate linguistic choice, you strengthen new neural pathways and weaken old ones, gradually reshaping both your habitual language and the reality it creates. Begin today. Choose one linguistic dimension from this book that resonates most strongly with your current challenges or aspirations. Implement the practical exercises associated with that dimension for 1 week, noting how these verbal shifts affect your experience and outcomes. Then add another dimension and another, gradually integrating all 9 into your personal language operating system. As you do, you'll discover that word magic isn't mystical or metaphorical. It's neurological, psychological, and profoundly practical. The words you choose literally rewire your brain, reshape your emotions, transform your relationships, and redirect your actions. By mastering the linguistic dimensions explored in this book, you don't just change your language, you change your life. The conversation you've been having with yourself has created the reality you're currently experiencing. A new conversation will create a new reality. That conversation begins with your next word. Choose it wisely. Yet even the most powerful linguistic shifts can falter without a clear roadmap to implement them. The words you've learned to use must be anchored within a structured approach that translates intention into consistent action. Otherwise, your newfound verbal mastery might remain just another interesting concept rather than a transformative force in your life. There exists a complementary skill that exponentially amplifies everything you've learned in these pages. To truly harness the full potential of your word magic and ensure these linguistic tools create lasting change, you need the audiobook, Strategic Planning, the Art of Mapping Goals into Reality. Tap the center of the video now to continue your transformation journey.